Hey, welcome back to the channel. Before we get started, I want to ask you something. Have you ever listened to a song and suddenly felt chills run down your spine without really knowing why? Not because the song was trending, not because everyone was talking about it, but because there was something inside that song that felt too real, too honest, too deep to simply be ignored. If you have ever felt that, then you already understand a little bit of what Diplo experienced inside a recording studio when Jimin and Jungkook from BTS started singing. And if you have never felt that before, get ready. Because after this video is over, you might start to understand why millions of people around the world cannot stop talking about the album ARIRANG. And honestly, by the end of this video, you might find yourself checking how many days are left until March 20th. Because that is exactly what happened to me when I started putting this together. Alright, so let's start from the beginning. Diplo. If you don't already know who Diplo is, let me give you a quick explanation, because this is important for understanding why his praise for Jimin and Jungkook is not something that can be taken lightly. Diplo, born Thomas Wesley Pence, is one of the most influential music producers in the world over the last 3 decades. 3 decades. That is not a short amount of time. During that period, he has worked with Beyoncé, Madonna, Justin Bieber, Shakira, Bad Bunny, Usher, and hundreds of other major names. He is someone whose ears have been trained to detect something special from the thousands of hours of sound he has heard throughout his career. He is not someone who is easily impressed. He is not someone who will walk out of a studio and shout to the world that something incredible just happened, unless it actually did. And that is exactly what makes what he said about BTS so significant. Because when a man like Diplo chooses his words carefully, those words carry weight. They carry the weight of 3 decades of experience. They carry the weight of someone who has heard it all and is therefore telling you, with complete sincerity, that he has just heard something he has never heard before. Now imagine someone like that, with experience like that, with ears like that, walking out of a recording session for the ARIRANG album and speaking to TMZ with an expression that simply could not be hidden. Early February 2026, in the middle of a Super Bowl party in San Francisco, Diplo paused for a moment and said something that immediately shook the entire K-pop world and even reached far beyond it. He called the ARIRANG album the craziest album that has ever existed. He said this project would shock the world, and then he mentioned one name in a way that made everyone who heard it stop breathing for a moment. Jungkook, no auto-tune. Perfect. That is what he said. 3 words that felt like a punch to the chest for anyone who had been following the journey of BTS for a long time. 3 words that sent the internet into a frenzy within minutes. 3 words that, if you really think about them, say everything you need to know about the standard that has been set for this album. But wait, because the real story does not stop there. Behind that praise for Jungkook, there is something even bigger happening. There is a song inside this ARIRANG album that apparently became the most memorable moment for Diplo throughout the entire recording process. A song that not only features Jungkook, but also Jimin. And when those 2 voices came together in one recording room, in one song, with Diplo standing on the other side of the studio glass listening to everything in real time, something happened that even a producer of his caliber did not have enough words to describe. Now, before we go any deeper, I want to say something honest. A lot of people out there, especially those who have not followed BTS very closely, might hear the name Jimin, and the first image that comes to mind is an idol performing jaw-dropping dance moves on stage. And yes, Jimin is genuinely one of the best dancers in modern music history. But if you only look at Jimin from that angle, you are missing half of who he really is. Because Jimin is a vocalist with an incredibly rare kind of voice. A voice that does not work in the way most people associate with technically gifted singers. He does not show off an extreme octave range. He does not chase high notes that satisfy the ear on a superficial level. What he does is far more difficult than that. He puts himself into every single note he sings. And the effect of that is something very hard to explain in words, but very easy to feel when you actually hear it. Musicians and producers who have worked directly with Jimin often describe the same thing. There is an emotional presence in his voice that feels so intimate, as though he is speaking directly to you and not to thousands of listeners at the same time. That is a quality that cannot be taught, cannot be engineered, cannot be produced by any technology on earth. It is something that lives inside a person and is then refined through years of hard work and sacrifice. And what makes Jimin even more fascinating as an artist is that this quality in his voice has only grown stronger over time. Every year, every album, every live performance, you can hear it deepening. You can hear someone who is becoming more and more comfortable with the truth of his own artistic identity. And that kind of growth, that kind of quiet confidence that does not need to announce itself, is exactly what separates a good singer from an artist who genuinely moves people. Think about what Jimin went through during the years leading up to ARIRANG. His solo debut, the album Face, was a deeply personal piece of work that stripped away every layer of performance and left something raw and real at the center. And then came his Billboard Hot 100 #1, a historic achievement that proved to the entire global music industry that his artistry translated beyond language, beyond culture, beyond every boundary that people had assumed would limit a Korean artist on the world stage. He did not just break a record, he rewrote what people believed was possible. And when someone carries that kind of experience into a recording session, when they walk into a studio having already proven to themselves and to the world that their voice is capable of moving mountains, something changes in the way they sing. There's a freedom in it, a fearlessness that was always there but is now completely unleashed. And Jungkook is a different story but equally extraordinary. If Jimin is the depth that pulls you into the water, Jungkook is the horizon that forces you to lift your head and look up. His voice has a clarity that is almost unreasonable by human standards. Clean without filters, powerful without losing nuance, flexible without losing character. He joined BTS at a very young age, and since then he has spent most of his life perfecting every aspect of his ability as a musician. The result is a singer who, when he sings without auto-tune, without effects, without any layer of technology placed over it, actually sounds better than most singers who are using all of those things. Diplo himself had already worked with Jungkook before the ARIRANG project. They collaborated on the song Closer to You, which became one of the highlights of Jungkook's solo journey before his military service. And that collaboration was enough for Diplo to know the level he was dealing with. But working on one solo track is a very different experience from working on a full album with all of BTS. And when the recording sessions for ARIRANG began, when Diplo walked into the studio and started working alongside 7 people who each brought an extraordinary level of ability and depth of experience, he realized that what was happening in front of him exceeded anything he had anticipated. He has said publicly that working on this album made him feel like he had been given access to something rare. Something that does not come along in every era of music. And for someone who has been present at so many important moments in modern music history, that kind of statement means everything. Now let's talk about the context that makes all of this feel so much bigger than just another music album. BTS began their collective hiatus in late 2022 to fulfill the mandatory military service required by South Korean law. One by one, the members entered the service and lived a life that was vastly different from everything that had become their daily existence for more than a decade. No stage, no studio, no spotlight following their every step. Just life as ordinary citizens fulfilling the same duty as millions of other young Korean men. Jimin and Jungkook, like the other members, went through that period in their own way. And when they finally came out and reunited with all of BTS to begin working on this comeback album, what they brought into the studio was not just the overflowing excitement of a reunion. They brought growth. They brought changes that happened in the silence and solitude of those years. They brought a new perspective on who they are as individuals, on what truly matters in life, and on what it means to create something meaningful through music. And all of that went into the songs of ARIRANG, including into the song that specifically features Jimin and Jungkook together, and which became the most memorable moment for Diplo throughout the entire recording process. Now I want you to imagine something. Imagine you are Diplo. You are sitting behind a mixing desk in a world-class recording studio. In front of you is a large glass that separates the control room where you are sitting from the recording booth where the artists sing. And inside that booth, after all the technical preparation is done, after all the microphone adjustments and monitor settings and levels have been handled, Jimin takes his position. Headphones on, lyrics in hand, and then he starts singing. You hear him through high-quality monitors, capable of capturing every single detail of the sound coming in. And you hear something that makes your hand stop moving over the mixing desk. There is a presence in that voice that you simply cannot handle purely on a technical level. There is something there that goes beyond notes and rhythm and dynamics. There is something that feels like someone telling you something deeply personal, and you cannot help but listen. You find yourself leaning forward, slightly without even realizing it. Your finger hovers over the talkback button to say something to him, but you do not press it, because you do not want to interrupt whatever is happening on the other side of that glass. You just want to keep listening. And then, at a certain point in the song, Jungkook comes in. His clean and powerful voice meets Jimin's deep and emotional voice. And what happens when those two voices meet is not simply a technically beautiful harmony. What happens is something that feels like two very different colors being mixed together and producing something that could not have been predicted from either color on its own. Jimin brings depth and warmth. Jungkook brings clarity and strength. And together, the two of them create something that makes Diplo, with all his experience, with all his caution in making judgments, feel the hair on the back of his neck stand up. That is what he meant when he said this album would shock the world. Not because of the sophistication of the production, although the production is extraordinary. Not because of the massive marketing campaign, although the entire industry is paying attention. But because there are moments inside this album, including the moment when Jimin and Jungkook sing together in that song that made Diplo get chills, that cannot be produced any other way except by bringing two genuinely gifted people into one room and giving them a song worthy of their voices. We also need to talk about the name ARIRANG itself, because this is not just a cool sounding title. ARIRANG is a Korean folk song that has existed for centuries. The song speaks of separation, of longing, of someone walking away and leaving behind the person who loves them. But beneath that story of parting, there is a resilience that forms the core of the Korean national character throughout history. There is a belief that those who leave will return. That distance is temporary. That love and strong bonds will survive anything. And when you understand that, when you truly sit with the meaning behind that word, the decision to name this album, ARIRANG hits completely differently. It stops being just an album title and becomes a promise. A promise from 7 men to the people who waited for them. A promise that says we left, but we came back, and we brought everything we had with us. When BTS chose the name ARIRANG for their comeback album after nearly 4 years apart, that was not a coincidence. It was a deeply conscious statement. A statement about their identity as Korean people, as musicians whose roots are firmly planted in the land and tradition that shaped them. And when Jimin and Jungkook sing their song on this album, they are not merely singing melody and lyrics. They are carrying the full weight and meaning of that name into every note they produce. Jimin, who during his solo period became the first Korean artist to top the Billboard Hot 100, returned to the group with something different in his voice. There is a maturity that can only come from someone who has proven himself outside the context of the group, who has stood alone before the world and survived on his own terms. And there is also a very deep gratitude, the kind of gratitude that can only be felt by someone who knows how precious it is to have 6 other people to come home to. Jungkook, who also released extraordinary solo work before and during his military service, came with something similar. He proved that he is not simply the youngest member following the direction of his seniors. He is a musician with a strong and independent artistic vision and voice. And when he returned to BTS, he brought all of that with him. Not to dominate, but to contribute to something greater than himself. Diplo saw all of that. He heard all of that. And he knew, with the intuition that can only belong to someone who has spent 3 decades of their life understanding how music works at its deepest level, that what was happening in front of him was something that would be remembered. Not just by the fans, not just by the industry, but by anyone who was lucky enough to hear it. And that is a rare thing to be able to say about anything in a world that produces more music every single day than any one human being could possibly listen to in a lifetime. Right now, we are all still waiting. The official track list for ARIRANG has not been announced. We do not yet know the exact title of the song featuring Jimin and Jungkook together that gave Diplo chills. But we know that song exists. We know it is somewhere among the 14 tracks that will form the album that Diplo called the craziest album that has ever existed. And on March 20th, 2026, when that album can finally be heard by the entire world, millions of people will sit with their headphones on and find out for themselves whether what Diplo felt is something they can feel too. Millions of people in every time zone, in every country, in every language, pressing play at the same moment and experiencing something together that words have not yet been invented to fully describe. The answer, in my opinion, is already quite clear. When two voices as extraordinary as Jimin and Jungkook, each of whom has grown and developed beyond all expectations during nearly 4 years apart, finally come together again in one song, in one room, with a world-class producer who knows exactly how to place every element in exactly the right position, what is produced is not just a good song. What is produced is a moment. And moments like that do not happen every day. They do not happen every year. Sometimes they do not happen even once in an entire decade. But when they do happen, when all the right elements align at exactly the right time, they leave a mark that does not fade. They become the kind of thing people talk about long after the charts have moved on and the algorithms have shifted to something new. They become the kind of thing that a new generation of music lovers will discover years from now and feel exactly the same thing that we are about to feel on March 20th. That is what great music does. It does not age. It does not expire. It simply waits for the next person who is ready to be moved by it. Diplo already got chills. Now it is our turn. If you are excited and counting down to the ARIRANG album, make sure you subscribe to this channel because we will keep updating everything right up until March 20th. Drop a comment down below and tell me which BTS song you are most looking forward to on ARIRANG. And if this video was helpful and you enjoyed it, share it with your fellow ARMY. See you in the next video.